Your golf ball is the most technologically advanced, or it's not. Your golf ball is either the most consistent, or it's not. It's the most trusted, or it's not. The fact is, it's either Titleist, the best performing golf ball in the world, or it's not. Prove it for yourself. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. What will you play?
Hello and welcome to episode 119 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's ongoing search for clues as to why people get so hooked on this ridiculous game. I'm Rod Murray, and thanks to the wonders of the internet, I'm joined from Scotland by my colleague John Huggan, who recently caught up with former Ryder Cup captain and European Tour stalwart Mark James. Huggy, welcome. What a fabulous storyteller and interview subject Mark James is. I'll admit with some shame, I wasn't expecting him to be as entertaining as that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't surprised. I've known him, quite a long time now. I don't know him particularly well, but I mean, we've always been on good terms, and he's a very bright lad, Mark. You can tell that there's a good mind there, and he's always been a bit of a rebel, which against the establishment, which unbelievably that attracted him to me. But yeah, I've always gotten on well with him. He's a good interview when he knows you, I think, and trusts you a little bit, as hopefully people will find out when they listen to this. But I've always had a lot of time for him, and he's a very underrated player, very odd swing, eccentric would be the best way maybe of describing his swing. But he's one of these guys that in that group with Howard Clark and Sam Torrance and Ken Brown, who were one step below the kind of golden age of European golf, the Seves and Faldos and Woosnams. But if he'd been around playing at his peak today, if he'd been 30 years younger or whatever, he would be in the top 50 in the world comfortably, and he'd be playing in America, he'd be playing whatever he wanted to play. And I mean, the Paul Caseys and the Justin Roses and all those guys, no better than Howard Clark and Mark James and Sam Torrance, by the way. So they're just a different era, different time.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you asked him about that interview, and I thought his response was interesting and perhaps reflects a different generation. He would love to have played more in America, I'm sure, but he was quite either way about it, wasn't he? As he said, a lot of people, they went to America, didn't like it.
Well, he did. He went to America and played on the senior tour and was successful.
He did a Thompson, didn't he? Did a Peter Thompson, went over there and won everything that he did.
A little bit, yeah. He wasn't as good as Peter Thompson, but he did pretty well. I mean, and I think he enjoyed that aspect of it. It was a bit more social. It wasn't as cutthroat, obviously.
Yeah.
The one thing, you and I have talked about this before, but he's no great fan of the old course at St Andrews, and I have one regret. Well, this is not in the podcast, but we were talking afterwards, and I asked him if his opinion of the old course had changed, and he said, "Yes, it has actually. I think it's even worse than I did before." So I wish that had been on the podcast, but unfortunately, it was too late.
Well, it's a beautifully succinct peek into his personality, isn't it? I'm sure he would have had a nice grin on his face as he, knew threw that hand grenade out there that the old course isn't what it is. Yeah. He's very old school, Huggy, and you learn some things. What I enjoy about these interviews, players of this generation aren't golf obsessed, are they? There was a whole other life, it feels like, going on compared to what we see in the modern era. The money's bigger, people are more professional, all that sort of stuff. These guys lived a bit differently, and it's always fascinating to peek into how they develop their games. As you said, he hasn't got the orthodox swing like we see on TV these days, but it was a different journey to professional golf sort of 30, 40 years ago, wasn't it? And this really sort of marks it.
Well, yeah, I mean, Mark's always, as we've said, earlier, he's got a very active mind, and he's got a great wife, one of the great wives, Jane. She's terrific, and they've not got any kids, so for whatever reason, and he's big into skiing. They've got a place, I think in France, and they do a lot. He's into other things. He's got an active mind that's not just 100% golf, which is no bad thing.
Yeah, well, this was a great interview, Huggy. I enjoyed it because it wasn't so much about the newsy stuff, which is very easy to get caught up in and you can't avoid. You did ask me about Live at the end, but it was a lovely chat about none of that, which is refreshing in the modern times. So it was. It's a fabulous listen. I hope people enjoy it as much as I did. Thanks for joining us to give it an intro.
My pleasure.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is a multi-tournament winner, multi-Ryder Cup player, Ryder Cup captain in the past. Mark James, what was and is the thing about golf for you?
Well, when I was younger, I guess I was a pretty angry, miserable kid, and my dad played golf, so it gave me somewhere to go and stay out of trouble. And you can play golf on your own and not be angry with anyone within 40 feet.
Were you the classic angry teenager?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, absolutely. I can't. I didn't know at the time, and still don't why I was angry. But
a rebel without a forearm.
Oh no! Well, actually, probably at times. Yeah, I used to break a few clubs, but they didn't get replaced very easily in those days.
Yeah. So, what got you into it then? What attracted you?
I think, well, my dad played and I tried it when I was about 10 or 11. There was no plastic clubs then, so you couldn't really start when you were 5 or 6. And I was pretty weedy too. I'd had TB when I was about 10. Mm-hmm. So I was weedy before that. So I was even weedier. And tried it, and I wasn't too bad. And it was one of those things I enjoyed it. Enjoyed the solitude at times and the competition, and just gradually got better and better and better. Never really stopped improving till I got on the circuit.
And what made it better sport for you than other games, which I'm sure everybody has to do them at school, football and rugby and all the rest of it?
Well, mainly because I was pretty crap at those games. I was not awful, but absolutely average.
You weren't
talent.
starring, yeah.
No, I wasn't starring.
No, nor was I. So. Also,
I found rugby inherently rather painful. I tackled someone once, he turned around and clobbered me in the nose. I thought, I'm not really wild on this.
Sounds similar to my experience of rugby, limited experience. I gave it up when I was about 14, saying, it's just stupid this, if you want to play golf,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I was scrum half too, so, the second the ball was in my hands, it was gone, even if it was to the opposition. I was not a daft rugby player, but occasionally.
I was a kind of quivering centre, I remember. I once tackled a future British Lion, though. He was a year above me at school, but he didn't even slow down, so that kind of convinced me.
Yeah, it gets a bit like that once you get too old for it, yeah.
So I always ask this question, when did it twig with you that, I'm pretty good at this and I can beat people? Was that part of it for it? Was the enjoyment the hitting the ball or the competition?
I think there was enjoyment in winning competitions, and if you start when you're a kid and you start improving, you're always going to win stuff for certain. And there was some pleasure in that, but there was also pleasure in doing something well, because when you're like even 12, 13, 14, and before you get down to single figures, you can play around a golf and you can hit very few poor shots, but I wasn't very long off the tee, so I had a lot of rounds where I played very well for the length I hit it, and there's a lot of pleasure in that. Mm-hmm. And but I just gradually got better. But the first time I thought, well, maybe I could be decent was probably when I was sent by Lincolnshire up for a trial for the it was the British boys, and there was an England-Scotland match before it, and I went up as a trial to try and qualify, get into the team. I think there was probably 4 spots to go with the.
What year would that be?
That would be 1971 at Barassi.
Right, yeah. Howard Clark won the British boys there. He was just telling me that about 2 hours ago.
Was he? Did he tell you about me coming out to watch him?
No, he did not, but you can tell me now.
Oh, well, Well, anyway, I qualified and I got in this team, and I didn't really. I don't think I had a full set of clubs, and my bag had a hole in pencil bag. And I think Howard did play that year, obviously, and guys like John Putt, maybe Roger Revel, I don't know. But these guys were on a different level of maturity to me. They had muscles and they had woolly head covers and big bags. I'd never seen big bags. They were wandering around in tarsier jumpers, smoking cigarettes, and looking like they were sort of ready for the circuit. And I've just come out of Hicksville. In my mum's car.
Well, Howard was kind of the same. He was saying that he struggled financially. He had to work in the winter to fund his amateur golf.
Oh, I think it was standard practice then. But he looked as though he was making 80 grand a year.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But I'm sure he wasn't. But, it was an eye-opener seeing these guys. And anyway, we played the match. I did all right. But in fact, I partnered David Nankerville first day, who was actually the brother of Bobby Davro. And I met Bobby in Dubai about 10 years ago.
People in Australia, where this podcast was headed, Bobby Daver was a kind of impressionist entertainer type guy.
Yes, he's sort of like Rolf Harris, but just the good stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure Rolf Harris is.
We're moving in the wrong direction.
Yes, we are.
That was my fault. Anyway, I got knocked out in about the third round or something, and I thought, well, I'll go out and watch one of these guys. It was still late morning, and I thought, I'll go out and watch Howard Clark, 'cause he was obviously, he was one of the very best boy players at the time, if not the best. So I go out and I caught up with him on a par 3 at Barassi, and I get ready behind the tee. I'd hit about a 5-iron earlier in the day. Howard steps up and he pulls out an 8-iron. And it's just unbelievable. Anyway, hits it. It just, first shot I ever saw him hit, it hurtles high and long. I'm just thinking, that's unbelievable. Came down straight into the hole. Oh. That was the first shot I ever saw him hit.
Well, it's funny, he was talking about holes in one he'd made, because he made one in the Ryder Cup, and he also
hangs on about that.
Well, he does, and
yes,
he also mentioned the TPC at Sawgrass.
Oh, did it?
He did it on TV.
Sky, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, it did give him a bit of pleasure, that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point, is that when it twigged that you were better than most and had a chance?
I thought the fact that I'd qualified, and I was probably off about, I suppose, 2 or 3 at the time, or something, 1 maybe. The fact that I'd qualified and then I seemed capable of competing in the match itself, and I sort of thought, oh yeah, I've sort of got a chance, and finished my A-levels the next year, which would have been 72, and then went on the amateur circuit, working in winters.
How many A-levels?
I only took 2. I couldn't do maths with French, which I wasn't brilliant at French, but it would have been quite nice. I was the only guy in the year who couldn't do the 3 subjects he wanted. But I got those, but I wasn't. I'm not.
I just wondered. Yes.
I wasn't a genius.
I'm still a bit bitter about the fact that I had to sit in chemistry. I mean, what was I doing in a science class? It was nonsense.
Oh, crikey, no, that's horrible, isn't it? Yeah. Chemistry. Oh. Yeah. Always looked a bit dangerous to me with the experiment.
Well, the Bunsen burners was on the go then. Did you have them?
Yeah. I don't know. Do they still have those?
I don't know.
I don't think
I haven't set foot in a school for a while.
Today's youth loose with Bunsen burners.
Yeah. So anyway, the amateur circuit. You won the English amateur, I know, but what was the build up to that? Was that surprising, or did you come from kind of nowhere, or was that? Were you a contender on arrival?
Well, my first year I played a bit in 72 and after school, but didn't do anything particular. I think I was 3rd in the Brabazon or something that year. 73, I was sort of maybe a little better, but nothing special. And then suddenly in 74, everything seemed to just fall together, and suddenly I was a very good amateur player, and just playing well seemed to come easy. And I think I'd hooked up. My coach had disappeared off somewhere else, up to Glasgow, I think, sometime between my ages of sort of 15 and 18 or something, or 16 and 19. And I'd hooked up with him again. I was mobile, so I could go up and see him, and that helped. And I'd put on 40 yards in between the ages of about 17 and 20, which suddenly, I was getting it out there. Wasn't very good at getting long irons and 3-woods off the ground, but you can work round you.
Well, what was your swing like then? I mean, you and I have talked before, and I think the word we came up with was idiosyncratic. Best describe your action.
Yeah, people can't remember. People remember my swing from the 90s. And yes, you're absolutely right. Peter Baker sent me a little video clip which had been copied out of a Bernard Cook's collection of videos of players from the 70s, 80s, whatever, and it was from 1980. And I never realised how well I swung it in 1980. I mean, then it wasn't textbook. It was, I took it wide on the backswing, away from my body, and then there was a pronounced increase in the wrist cock as I came down. And I'd aim left and hold the ball way off. And then that was not conventional. But actually the swing now is accepted.
Sounds a bit like Lee Trevino.
It wasn't too dissimilar. His was slightly more idiosyncratic then. than mine was. Mine became more idiosyncratic. But actually, if you looked at my swing then, it's a modern swing. And credit goes to my coach then, Gavin Christie, because he gave me that swing, and it was probably, I would say that swing was 40 years ahead of its time. No exaggeration, because now everyone's into the late hit and the width away from me on the backswing. And I was amazed when I saw it. I was, in fact, stunned that I'd deteriorated, and I don't know, blame myself or my coach.
Well, I don't know. I always hate to use the word orthodox, because who knows what that means, really.
Well, it was unorthodox then, my swing, because people didn't have the swing from the 2000s in the 70s. It wasn't the way to play. No one sort of held it away, keeping the hands ahead of the club head way through impact, apart from, as you say, Trevino. And I guess quite a few of the top players, but they weren't really trying to do that.
I was amazed that nobody copied Trevino.
Yeah, well, it was the very, very bowed left wrist and a sort of and the slide that made it look difficult to copy, I think. But actually, the good bits of his swing are fantastic.
Oh, well, nobody hit it better than he did.
He was brilliant.
Yeah.
And actually, I played with him on the Champions Tour a few times, and he was hitting it right to left. He still plays pretty well. I've seen video of him in his 80s recently. He can, he's an entertaining chap.
Oh, well, I grew up loving him. I thought he was just the business, so my favourite until Seve came along anyway. So,
well, but no famous Scottish players in there.
Well, I kind of like Bernard Gallagher's short game, but not his driving so much.
He did. Bernard was from an era where if you were in doubt, you teed it quarter of an inch high with the driver and squeezed it out straight.
Just what he did.
He was brilliant at that. Mm-hmm. I remember playing with him a couple of times in the 70s, and he was brilliant at getting it around. Very, very clever, good short game. Yeah. But he off the tee, a lot of players were suspect in those days.
Yeah. Well, the persimmon equipment didn't help.
Oh no, it was a difficult. Which is why I'm amazed now that they keep talking about the size of drivers and everything, but they put a limit on the volume of the head. Yeah. I don't know why they didn't just put a smaller limit on the area of the face. I would have thought that would have.
They certainly asked harder questions back in the day. I mean, that's why nobody swung at 100% like they do now. I mean, they're not leaving much in the bag, are they?
There's nothing in the bag now because the ball doesn't bend in the air like it used to.
I find it's
a different game.
Well, I find it too one-dimensional compared with what I grew up watching. I mean, I'm sounding like the old fuddy-duddy, I know, but I preferred it when the ball went sideways more as well.
No, it's nice these days when you get a really tricky course that's playing quite short because they have to cope with that, and they're not wild in it because a lot of them hit it so far, and you start putting a lot of trouble on a golf course these days, and they do squeal a little bit, but I mean the standard is phenomenal now, just ridiculous. Yeah. The standard of chipping, I think, as much as anything is, I've just never seen anything like it in the modern game.
Yeah. As I say, you're right. I mean, my only criticism is that they've become, as you say, incredibly good at not too narrow a form of golf for my taste.
They were forced into it by the scoring got low in the late 90s, and they started lengthening courses. And then when the Pro V1 came out in probably 2000, and Metalwoods got better in around 2001 too, and suddenly the driving was a lot easier for a lot of players. And they started to make longer. And in fact, what really should have done is make greens smaller. But you make a green smaller, that's $100,000 up the Swanee. You make a new tee, it's 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't blame the players for a minute. I mean, it's not criticism of them because they're doing exactly what they should do, which maximises their ability to shoot low scores.
But no, I do like watching it these days. They're phenomenal players, and the commitment. They've got a lot of commitments when they play. You know, they've got they have to work out a lot before and after play. Some of them, and you know, you've got to spend time stretching, and you've got to be careful with your nutrition. You know, in our day, nutrition meant, you know, having lager instead of bitter. That was it was a different ball game.
I remember that Lanny Watkins famously saying his psychologist was a guy called Jack Daniels.
Yeah, yeah, he was very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, but because we'll get back to that subject. I know I like talking about it, and I know you do too. English amateur that you won. What's your memories of that?
Not too much. I played Michael Benellic in the semis, who was still extremely good, and I played great at Woodall Spa.
Great course.
Yeah, and I was only an hour and a quarter from home then, so stayed at home for it, which was perfect. And then John Watt or Watts, I can't remember which, sadly. I beat him in the final. He didn't play very well, and I played pretty well, so it was it was fantastic for me. That was and I won quite a few local things in '74, and I was breaking course records, and so, you know, I was pretty much a shoe-in for the Walker Cup in '75, which was great.
Now, I've done a story on the 75 Walker Cup, or I did, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and I remember calling you for your memories of that, and you said, can't remember a damn thing.
No.
Why is that, do you think?
A long time ago.
Yeah, but still, come on, you think it would stick in, you know. Everybody loves the Walker Cup.
Yeah. I mean, I beat Jerry Pate, I think, 3 times.
Everybody
in
beat
the
Jerry Pate that week.
But he still remembers it. I've seen him. I saw him over in the States on the Champions Tour, and he was, you know, it still hurts him a bit.
Yeah. Well, he lost every game he played.
Did he? Mm-hmm. Oh well, that's the breaks. He won a major in '76 the next year.
It
or
didn't take
something.
him long. Yeah.
So I think he did all right. He was a wonderful player. So no, I don't remember a lot. I was a bit out, you know, fish out of water really. A lot of people in jackets and ties, and you know, I wasn't overly comfortable.
No, I could remember that. Yeah. So you were still 3 points out of 4. You were the best player, at least points-wise, on the GB&I team that week.
Was I? Yeah, I played pretty well and got absolutely slaughtered by Gary Coke in the singles.
So you do remember?
Well, I remember that, but these are. You didn't need me to tell you that, did you?
No. Gary Coke's been on this, and he mentioned it. Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
The swine.
He says you were a bit of a marked man because you'd won 3 out of 3 before that.
God, Jerry had told him to crush me. That was probably it.
Yeah, possibly. So at that point, you're thinking, right, I'm good enough.
Yeah,
you got to the amateur final the following week as well.
Yes, I did. Lost to Vinnie Giles. Snowed on the Sunday before it. And then on the Sunday of the final, 7 days later, I had chronic hay fever. That's how quickly the weather changed. Yeah. But Vinny was very, very good, and I didn't play very well. So, that was that. He gave me a good duffing.
But you're thinking I'm good enough at this point?
I knew I was turning pro at this stage, at the end of the year. No one turned pro in the middle of the year in those days and got invites and stuff. But at the end of the year, I turned pro, and... Then I could, because I was an international amateur, I could enter the pre-qualifying at every tournament. There was no all-exempt tour then. So every Monday, 100 and odd people would turn up, play for generally between 10 and 40 spots, depending on the entry list, and try and qualify for the week's event. And if you made the cut, you automatically got in the next one.
What was that like, Monday qualifying?
I don't know really. I mean, I had to do it, but it didn't.
Probably you didn't, because you'd never done anything else. Maybe nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, there was nothing to compare it to. I mean, if I didn't get in, I didn't get in. Went home, and I don't know. At that age, I was living at home, and I didn't have much money. My dad gave me £1,000 and said, before I went off to South Africa at the start, he said, this will see you through a bit. He said, there isn't any more. I don't know if he was lying, but I mean, I did okay, and then I did okay in Zambia. Did 4 or 5 weeks in South Africa, 3 in Zambia and Kenya, Nigeria, and by the time I got back to Europe, I was sort of seasoned in the world of professional golf a little bit, and I just kept going and making enough qualifyings and.
Is all exempt better than that system?
Yeah, I think so, because with the Monday qualifying, it got ridiculous in come 83, the year before the tour went all exempt. So, and there was quite a few events where there was only 9 spots, 8 spots, and it was not enough. You get a lot of players then who play the whole year, and instead of, there was only through to 83, there was I don't know, 20 odd events. There was only about 16 in 76 my first year, so there wouldn't have been more than low 20s in 83. So there's a lot of people who only played at sort of 8, 9, 10, 11 events. Because of the qualifying, it evens out a bit.
And if you made the cut, you kept going, didn't you?
Yeah. So really, if you're good enough, you're fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of players weren't getting enough starts. So, once we went all exempt, you got your card at the school, you had a year of getting in pretty much everything you wanted then, and that was a much better system. It was...
I mean, I don't know what you think, but the all exempt thing, I think it's obviously better, but it's one of these things, it's a great idea that maybe went a little bit too far, and was it too hard? Even guys that were winning cards weren't getting that many starts. I've
never judged that to be the case.
I know that guys complain about that sometimes.
Pro golfers we complain about everything. But,
well, they do. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, you give out, say, I think it was as much as 30, 35 cards at times, but. Would they rather we only gave out 15 cards? Plus, these days you get into the Challenge Tour. You've got a whole season playing on the Challenge Tour to get one of 15 spots. So no, I don't. I disagree with that opinion. I can understand where it comes from, but I disagree. I think it's been it's worked extremely well on the European Tour.
Do you think there's anybody not made it?
No.
Because
I think that's the benchmark, and I didn't see anyone. There's only one guy I would think I've seen, even on the senior tour in Europe, who I think, crikey, if he'd played the main tour, he might have done pretty well, and that's probably Paul Wesseling.
Yeah,
and he was he played some wonderful stuff on the senior tour for 4 or 5 years.
That was true in America as well. There was a few sort of long-time club pros,
more guys over there, possibly.
And one on the senior tour, and had 4 or 5 years or whatever. Yeah,
they were. A lot of them had careers because I think in America, because you finish college, quite a few good amateurs think, I can get a good job and play amateur golf, and I'll just do that. Especially if the money wasn't great in the 1960s, 70s, so it's a fair option. Guys like Alan Doyle and Bruce Fleischer and that, they were...
Jay Sigel didn't turn pro because he hurt his hand, I think.
Jay Sigel, really?
He would have turned pro.
And these guys were great players at 50.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's Alan Doyle. Everyone should watch videos of him winning.
Talking about idiosyncratic.
Winning back-to-back US Senior Opens. I mean... Bloody hell! That was
well. He had a distinguished amateur career. I mean, he was incredibly hard to beat in match play.
Oh, Christ, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a mystery. How he just fantastic.
Yeah, Giles was the same. For all that, he's been on this podcast and said that stroke play is the only way to decide, championships. He wants the US amateur to go back to stroke play, which it did for a while. He didn't like the match play aspect of it.
I guess it's all a question of what format the other big amateur events are. Yeah. If you've only got one match play, that's fine. If you've got more match play than stroke play, then you've got a problem, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you need to, but I just find it hard to eliminate match play completely. I think it should be part of the. In fact, you can make a case for one of the majors being match play, the PGA Championship. Could go back to that,
Oh, good luck with making that.
Well, it's not going to happen. Don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't mind that.
I'll wait to read your dissertation on the subject.
Well, I've written this. If you were starting over tomorrow, what would be your 4 majors?
Which tournaments?
Yeah, I know which 4 I would do, but.
I suppose you'd go. It's hard, isn't it, when they've built up such a history? But obviously, the British Open, US Masters. I mean, the US Open is. There's been some strange old courses.
You're starting off tomorrow with a blank sheet.
Yeah, I know, but how do you say that if you just simply put letters next to every tournament and not titles and say, well, this is going to, you want to choose the best courses, and in theory, British Open is our best links courses. The Masters is at a venue which captures the imagination and was risk reward before that became such a common thing. The US Open, I mean, they go to some brutal courses, and they set them up like they had a few drinks too many the night before sometimes. With all due respect, yes. they've done some interesting stuff. But the USPGA I always liked because it was just played on good courses in good condition and fairly set up. So, but I know if you swapped any of them, I don't know what you swap them for.
Well, if I was starting over tomorrow, just for the sake of argument, with a completely nothing had happened before that, I would have the two Opens, our Open and the US Open. I'd have the Players' Championship because it's the biggest event on the biggest tour, and I'd have a World Match Play Championship that toured around the world.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty good event, wouldn't it? I could go with one of the four being a match play and toured around the world. Yeah, might be. It would work.
Oh, pleased that you're agreeing with me.
No, I don't see anything wrong with that. I sort of see. I see where you're going. I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. Why not?
Speaking of the majors,
even in Scotland, it could be.
Even in Scotland, yes, with our weather. I'm looking out here; it's pretty dreary here in sunny Yorkshire.
Oh, crikey! It's not raining. This is magnificent. Yeah. What a winter!
Oh, I know. Yeah. Anyway, not to dwell on that. The majors. I'm doing this podcast on the same day that, for people listening, that I've done one with Howard Clark, and he and you are teamed together as part of a group that I always think were kind of shafted in terms of the majors. You, Howard Clark, Sam Torrance, Ken Brown, that kind of group. The guys half a step down from the Seve, Faldo, Langer, Lyle group.
The lower half of Ryder Cup team.
Exactly. Yeah. Had you been around 20, 25 years later, whatever, you'd all be in the top 50 in the world, and you'd all be playing in all four majors every year, like Justin Rose, Paul Casey, those guys take for granted. Yeah. And my contention is that, given that guys like Bob Tway, Jeff Sluman, Larry Mize, all fine players, but no better, I don't, in my mind, than the group I just mentioned that you were part of. No better,
no, absolutely.
Had you guys been playing all four every year, one of you might have popped up and won one eventually.
Well, and that absolutely very possible, and also for the reason that once you hit the top 50 in the world now, you can get onto the American tour. So you're playing there week in, week out, and that was a masterstroke by the American tour in the early 2000s. The second that came up, I thought this, the players are just going to go now, and they're talking about we're a feeder tour for America. This is the last couple of years. Well, this has been going on for 20 years now, so it's nothing new. And
it's just formalised it, hasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's, but yeah, that was genius on behalf of the Americans to keep their tour such a high profile. But they're going, come the Champions Tour probably fairly soon. There's going to be quite a lot of foreigners going over there. So
Did it occur to you at the time that you were getting a wee bit hard done by? I've written it down here.
Yes,
you played in 1 Masters, 2 US Opens, and 6 PGAs, and 26 Opens.
Well, to be fair to the US Open, I turned down a few because they kept making the courses concrete greens and quite often wet fronts to the green, so it suited people who hit it straight up in the air. And I wasn't an overly low hitter, but I wasn't a high hitter, and I just felt I couldn't compete, so I stopped going. But that's up to them. I didn't like
it. But if you'd been over there full time, you would have played then.
I suppose so. I'd have been there, so I'd have probably turned up and paid me three nights. So, yeah, I'd have headed off on Friday night, somewhere better. So yeah, I like the USPGA. That's why I played 6 of those. But 1 Masters was, I was definitely hard done by then. I mean, in 1989, I played the Masters in 80. In 1989, I was 5th on the money list, won 3 events and lost another on a playoff, and won 3 points out of 4 in the Ryder Cup, and didn't get an invite to the Masters the next year. And you sort of think, what do you have to do? But to be fair, I wasn't.
Why were you there in 1980?
79. I was 3rd on the list. Won a couple of times, 4th in the Open. So yeah.
See, I always used to say that Seve played in that Masters, which he won, because he was in the top 1 at the Open the year before. But he was actually, I've been put right on that, he was actually one of the invitations. He was actually one of the foreign invitations to that Masters. Seve, believe it or not. And when he won.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. Because I always thought he got in because he'd won the Open. But if he'd been second in the Open, that was always my point, was had he been second, would he have been at the Masters?
Yeah, I don't know where was Seve on the money list that year? Because Sandy won it. I was third. Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, it just goes
it's interesting. But no, I knew it was wrong. I knew I should have got in more. But to be honest, that course was very much a high hitters, great putters course. And I was neither of those things. I was an average putter all my career.
Yeah, but you say that. I mean, we're talking, sadly, in the week where Maurice Bembridge passed away.
I didn't know that.
I spoke to him just before Christmas.
That's a shame.
It's 50 years this year that he shot his 64 in the last round. Now, Maurice Bembridge didn't hit the ball at his own way.
No, that was brilliant, but he was a great putter.
Yeah, but still, 64.
That's a shame, Maurice. I was at Malcolm Gregson's funeral last week.
We're at that age, aren't we?
He was a great guy, Malcolm. Yeah. Sad. But Maurice was a great putter, and I was an average putter my whole career, which is fine, but it didn't suit Augusta.
So you weren't walking around pissed off that you weren't getting to play in these things?
I'd been an angry teenager. I decided not to be angry anymore.
Yeah, you're not really answering the question. Did it occur to you at the time
that I should have got in?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I knew I wouldn't do very well, so it wasn't a big factor in my life.
It wasn't festering away then.
It was not festering in the slightest. I would have made a case that they were wrong and things should change, but no, I really wasn't that.
Yeah, I always take the list of major winners with a slight pinch of salt up until fairly recently, because there was such a bias towards Americans.
Yes,
given the 3 of them in the one country.
Very much so.
Yeah,
and lack of access and lack of preparation, and in fact, the courses over in Europe in the 70s and before probably the 90s was really, the courses were pretty ropey at times, to say the least.
Yes. Mm-hmm. What was the European tour like then? I mean, run me through in the early days, as you touched on it there. I mean, I remember Nick Faldo used to sound off about the facilities and the practice and this and that, and it was no good and blah blah blah.
Well, he was. Well, yeah. I mean, in the 70s, there weren't that many on the practice ground, and Nick was there, I was there, Ken was there, Howard, Greg Norman when he appeared, and other players used to sort of pop down for a bag and disappear, and we were still there, and so it was. Your caddy was out there shagging balls, and of course, the worse you hit it, the longer it took to hit any balls because he's racing all over the place.
It wasn't Ben Hogan with just standing there with a bit.
Yeah, that's the ideal. Practice was difficult because of that, and took a long time, and but I mean, it changed.
You were part of the revolution. I mean, you were part of the kind of group that came along and said, "Look, things need to get better."
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I joined committee as well in '82, I think. To help make a difference. It was, a few of the younger guys came on committee, and we were sort of keen to.
Was that your motivation? Just
to change things, because. I think it changed more quickly into the 90s. It was very hard to change things at first. We had this on the main tour with the board. The board was very stuck and intransigent for many years. And I know some of the board members were trying to change it, get rid of certain members. I won't go into details. And it proves incredibly difficult to shift people. And then finally, you unblock it and everything changes. And it's incredibly difficult to effect change without having a sort of extraordinary general meeting or something and just sacking everyone and causing utter chaos. It really is. It takes a long time. But I mean, particularly when I became chairman of the Players Committee in '94, I really wanted the committee to represent the players in dealing with things, whereas I always felt before that the committee were representing the staff in dealing with the players, and it's the wrong way around. I wanted it to be like a trade union. We are the players, and we're dealing with the stuff and trying to get the best deal for you all, not we represent the staff, and well, we don't want to pay you that much. We don't want to give you new balls. It's different. So yeah, I was part of that change really, and a lot of the younger players who came on committee and then went onto the board were part of it too, which was nice.
I say this with the complete benefit of hindsight, obviously, but I look back now, and I've said this to Ken Schofield. Was there an opportunity missed to build something that was going to take on the PGA Tour? Had you got the Seve, Langer, Lyle, all those guys to be part of it and say, right, we're going to play this tour and make it in bed with Asia and make it something that was everywhere except America and take them on?
Well, there wasn't much golf in Asia. Well, I mean, obviously there's plenty of golf, but I mean, not much in the way of sponsorship, and trying to hook up in those days was difficult. And, our tour, even into the mid-80s, was only low 20s number of tournaments, I think. I don't think it changed till the late 80s. Tour España came on board in the round Spain, that, obviously, and that created 3-4 new events, and we sort of got a few others on stream, and suddenly we were sort of approaching 30 events, but we still had big blanks. We hadn't got the co-sanctioned with South Africa's, Australia's, and all that. But I mean, we couldn't compete with America. Even
with those guys on board.
We wouldn't have got them.
They were the best players.
They were, but America had the best courses in the best nick. It had the best practice facilities. It had one country where you could just tour around and do your own stuff. It had the better hotels or rental apartments, or it had everything. It would always have been better. I don't think we could have got those guys on board. I think it would have been impossible.
Yeah, I've often wondered. I mean, as I said, purely with hindsight, easy to say now. But
I think we did well to hang on to them as much as we did. Guys like Seve and Langer played a lot in Europe, and Nick, I think, went full time to the States at one point, but he played a lot in Europe in the 80s. Yeah, I don't think we could have done much more to hang on. Than we did.
And Monty and Ollie came the next kind of two on that level. They stayed as well, pretty much.
Yeah, they came around in the mid to late 80s. But they liked it more in Europe. Both of
Ollie,
them.
I mean, I've always been critical of Monty in the respect that I think he should have gone to America. Had he gone to America before Tiger came along, I think Monty, not only would he have won tournaments, I think he would have won the money list, because his level of performance was so high week to week. Like fourth was a bad week at one point.
Oh, I think he was. I think he was the best player Britain's ever produced. No question. His year in, year out performance.
But he liked the appearance money. That was my criticism of him.
Yeah, probably. But there would have come a point where do I need appearance money? I mean,
but he was doing daft things like the famous Congressional US Open that Ernie won that Monty should have won, 97. I mean, Monty was at Slaley Hall the week before and drove from Slaley Hall on the Sunday night to London, then got on a plane on the Monday morning and flew to America and wondered why he was tired and jet lagged by Friday. That things like that perplexed me when you were as good as him.
I would have thought that. You fly to the East Coast, 5-hour time change, arrive on a Monday. I think that's early enough to start on a Thursday. I played Champions Tour in my 50s, and I would go on a Tuesday for a Friday start. End of story, and I'd be absolutely fine.
But you were an athlete,
Monty's probably a little fitter than he looks a lot of the time.
He's very flexible, I know that. Yeah. Well, he is. I mean, you could tell by his swing. I mean, he was just,
Yeah. No, he is a wonderful player, but I don't know. Well, you've got to do what makes you happy too.
Yeah.
And if you like playing in Europe, and a lot of those guys really like Europe. Seve hated America. I mean, and unreasonably so.
Yeah, well, over the top, yeah.
Titleist is the #1 ball in golf. Yes, being #1 is a number, and more players trust the Pro V1 or Pro V1X than all other golf balls combined. But being #1 is more than a number. It's a mindset. It's a relentless mission to design and manufacture the best performing golf balls in the game, so you can chase whatever your #1 is. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf.
How important, everybody, I mean, he was important to the Ryder Cup scheme of things, but just how important was he?
Seve?
Yeah.
Massive. Yeah, massive. You know, he's sort of.
And you would see him up close, obviously.
Oh yeah. I mean, in the team room, he was fantastic. I mean, he could be nutty as a fruitcake quite often, but in the team room at Ryder Cups, he was an incredible presence, and he was such a magnificent player that. You know, just to have him there, and he was clever too. I mean, obviously he's devious at times. He was so clever.
Slicket's a good Scottish word. He was like sometimes.
But yeah, he was massive. You know, he was sort of reason that we got the Europeans in. I think was it Jack who suggested it as well.
Again, harking back to my chat with Howard Clark earlier today, he mentioned that Jack got everybody in a room at the '77 Ryder Cup, which you would be. Were you not there when he got both teams in and said, "Look, we need to change this. It's not working anymore."
I don't remember that. I don't know what both teams would have been doing.
Clifton Arms, Howard was quite specific. So maybe you weren't invited.
Maybe wasn't. It's probably I can understand that. Ken Brown and I, they thought, no, don't invite.
Yeah. Well, it's probably But yeah, I mean, and my argument with the European tour was that they only needed Seve. Those other guys were a complete bonus, I thought. You know, if you had Seve, you could build the whole tour around him.
Yeah, we pretty much. Yeah, and we did have him for most of his career, which was fantastic. And Monty as well, who was, a massive name to have.
Yeah.
Not a completely different character to Seve.
Yeah. What were your favourite Seve moments that you saw up close?
I remember in '95, Howard and I had played early, and there's Howard, myself, and Seve who'd played early against Lehman, I think, in the singles.
Old Kill.
And David Guilford, who'd played with Seve in the pairs, and Howard and I played with them in a practice round. And Seve was mystified that David couldn't chip better, because to Seve it's falling off a log. Yeah. Anyway, we're sat at all the same side of a table, of a rectangular table, looking at a big screen television, and David Guilford's over the back at 18.
Yeah.
And there's 5 yards of it, he's over the back. The greens are just hurtling away from him. There's about a yard of long rough, 3 yards of spectator trodden stuff, and then another 4 yards of quite thick, lush stuff. And Gilly's looking at it, pretending that he sort of knows what he's doing. and you see Gilly's hand sort of rummaging in the bottom of lower parts of the bag, and Seve puts his sandwich down and starts leaning forward, and you can hear it, and Gilly pulls out the putter, and Seve goes, "No!" Gets up and runs as fast as he could. He was running straight to see the captain and say, "Stop Gilly doing this. He's committing suicide." And of course, Gilly hit it with the putter, and it footled about 5 yards into the thick stuff. Then he got it onto 10 feet and held it for a half or whatever. So, but yeah, he was very invested in all the players, and he would offer to play with a guy like Gilly, who was in the lower echelons of the team, really, on that type of course, just because if he thought it was better for the team. And that's not always the case with pro golfers at all. Because I offered to change in '89. I think that's when I played with Howard, and one of the other players was paired with someone, and they used different balls, and one of the guys had come to me and said, "I'm really not happy playing with this chap." And I said, "Look, leave it with me." So I went to the captain and said, "Look, if I play with the other guy, Howard uses the same ball as him. Maybe try that. Maybe they're happier." And anyway, the captain didn't listen. So, you can always come up with these things, but, I'd rather have played with Howard. But, Seve, I always wanted to play with the best player, but I never got the best player.
No, well,
I'd have loved to play with Seve.
I look at the teams that you played in, I can understand that.
Howard was great. I loved playing with Howard, very positive. And, he's such a good player, Howard, in the 80s.
And Seve was doing okay with the guy he was playing with.
Seve manages, or managed, sad to say. Yeah, no, he was amazing in all the Ryder Cups I played with him.
How important was the Ryder Cup to you?
It was big because, as you mentioned, sort of that lower half of the Ryder Cup didn't really get in many majors, or not enough. So, the next big achievement was playing in the Ryder Cup. So it was huge.
You like Howard. I mean, Howard was kind of the same. He had gaps, but you had a big gap. I mean, you played 3 in a row, and you weren't seen for 8 years, and then you played 4 in a row.
Yeah, I missed 3 in a row, not by much.
Yeah.
And then played the next 4. My swing gradually got worse and worse over that. Probably noticeably 85, 86 deteriorated. But the problem is I won a tournament in both those years, and that can be the worst thing that can happen. I remember Ovi Selberg changed his swing completely, and early on in the change he won a tournament. And, there was no going back then. He was, there's normally no going back anyway, but it reinforces your thoughts that you're going in the right direction, even if you're not. And I had to do some massive reconstruction at the end of 87. I said to my coach, well, you go away and think about it, I'll go away and think about it. And then start of 88, I said, we need some ideas here because this isn't good enough. And we both came up with one thing each, worked on that, and completely changed.
Yeah, I noticed looking at your record, I mean, I was aware of this already, but you were very good in the Open, more than once or twice. I mean, you 4 top 5s in the Open. Links Golf obviously agreed with you despite coming from Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I like the group. We have links courses in Lincolnshire.
In Lincolnshire? Oh, yeah. Of course you do. That's true. Yeah. I always think of Woodall Spa.
Dandyland.
First comes to mind, yeah.
If that's still open, I don't really know.
Again, I dropped geography at school as well, obviously. Yeah.
The big thing about links golf for me was the greens. They're always slower than the other majors. Mm-hmm. So I was being, as I say, not banging on about it, but I was just not in the class of other guys on greens that were 11.5, 12 on the stip meter, but links greens at 10. And most of the links courses, the greens are not overly slopey. I think Muirfield's probably the one exception. I never liked Muirfield for that reason. I was very comfortable. The sand was always brilliant, and I loved chipping off seaside turf. Yeah. So, I felt comfortable on links courses.
Yeah, and you popped up pretty early. I mean, you were 76... 5th, I think.
Yeah, £2,800.
Was that what it was?
Side 5th. Yeah, it wasn't even a factor when you're young, single, sort of living at home. It's not even a factor how much you win. You just think, I've done that, now I'll do something else. But yeah, that was sort of when I first appeared to any degree on the tour.
Yeah. When did you get married? Did the money become more important when you got married?
Not really. We had enough to live on. And I've been lucky. I've never really struggled so much. I say during my bad years, I was winning the odd event. So, money was coming in. And yeah, in the 80s, you had to be a superstar to really be flush. There just wasn't the money in the game. It was, I had enough money, and, you do your pension every year. And so, I was fine. Had it plenty of money. I was nicely off. Yeah. But suddenly through the late 80s and into the 90s, the money ballooned, and
because you're lucky, and maybe not the exception, but one of the maybe minority of players that played at your level who've been married to the same woman for all that time. I watch these old Ryder Cups on Sky that pop up now and again, and you see a few, former wives knocking about at these things.
Yes, yeah.
Jane's always there.
Oh yes, I mean, 43 years we've been married. I'm beginning to think she's a keeper.
All right. So you're still calling her the present Mrs. James?
Well, that's what my coach used with his first wife. He said, he'd say, "This is my first wife."
Yeah.
And she became that relatively soon. Yeah.
We need to talk about your Ryder Cup captaincy inevitably. 25 years ago, can you believe?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No,
It was certainly one of the more memorable stints as captain. I remember being hugely entertained, along with everybody else in the press media centre with your press conferences during that.
They went very well.
They were legendary. You're very funny. Americans don't get irony, and you were doing irony a lot.
It's funny in America because sometimes they don't, but then you look at some of their comedy programs and they're just so good, and way better than a lot of ours. You know, it's we struggle on that front these days, and America has brilliant, ironic and sort of subtle writing. It's and they even in their drama programs. They do humour extremely well. A lot of drama series in Britain. I'm sort of thinking, God, let someone do something to this script.
Something funny always happens in everybody's life.
Just put a little bit of humour into it. It's like 2 hours of thinking, oh, crikey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of The West Wing. Well, back in the day, and it had a lot of humour in it.
Stunningly good. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
But anyway, what made you think that you would make a good Ryder Cup captain? Because you obviously did think that, or you wouldn't have taken the job.
I think the biggest thing is that you get on well with the players. And I had dinner with Sam in probably about 97, probably, or even before that. And I said to him, I said, Sam, have you thought about who's going to be Ryder Cup captain after Seve? And Sam said, no, I haven't. I said, well, it's sort of...
What about me?
I'm not staying much further than you or me. Crikey, he hadn't really thought about it. And I said, well, look, if it comes down to that, you know, and ultimately it did. I think after Seve, I said, because I was chairman of the Players Committee and we had a lot of input to these decisions, I said, you know, can we leave the decision a year? And I said to Sam, we'll see who plays best in 98. And whoever plays best might make it in 99, so the other one will be captain. That's a good idea, he said. So come towards the end of 98, he'd played really well and I'd had a poor year. So I was captain. But it suited him perfectly. I think temperamentally I was better for an away match and only 1 year of build-up. And it was ideal for me. And I think for him, a home match is better. We're quite different personalities in that situation. So I think home was better for him. And he had 3 years build-up ultimately, which he didn't mind at all. It might have driven me mad. So it worked out for the best. Yeah.
What was your kind of... big picture philosophy before we get into specifics?
Big what?
For doing the job.
I didn't pitch. I said, look, I'd love to do it.
No, I mean, in terms of how you were going to do it, I'm talking, you know.
No, we didn't have to say, well, I'm going to do this or that in those days. It was a simple, well, you know, does this guy deserve to be, does he get on well with the players? Are the players happy?
It was not statistics then. Eduardo Molinari was not lurking in the background.
Oh, I did statistics when I turned pro. Oh, and as an amateur. Right. Oh, yeah, because that's what I did at A-level, maths with statistics, grade A.
There you go.
So I knew what I was doing.
I knew you'd get that in eventually. Yeah.
You sucked it out of me. So I knew what I was doing with statistics, you know, to an amateur level sort of thing. I'd done all the stats, but ultimately it's very difficult if you've got a good pair of hands, because your greens missed left can indicate a problem that the ball should go right, because you sense something's wrong and you turn it over, and then you know you've got other factors like wind, and you start to get almost too much detail, and it's almost, I think, with statistics, better to put down feelings rather than actual numbers. The numbers could be misleading, particularly, as I say, balls going left. You know, if I'm missing fairway left 60-40 and 60% are going left off the tee, you know, it indicates I'm hooking, but actually the fault is very probably a hitting it right fault. But I'm sensing it 15% of the time, whatever, enough to skew the statistics to read left. So you've got to be incredibly aware of.
Yeah, I mean, I look at these things, a complete amateur when it comes to statistics, but not every golf shot is equal.
No.
See, and you average out everything. And that can be misleading again, because I want to know how good Mark James is on the shots that really matter.
Well, that's,
you know, that's the one that I want to hear.
And I mean, when
I'm not sure how you do that.
Yeah, that's very difficult. You know, I looked at the stats when I was captain for the wildcards, and I pretty much knew that anyone who didn't play well in the 10 weeks running up would not get a wild card, because I wanted people who were likely to be on form. But the really difficult one was Carlson and Coulthard.
Has Robert Carlson ever spoken to you again?
He has, yeah.
Oh,
and
glad to hear that.
and I think I couldn't. He's asked me why a few times, and he came back to me at the airport again to ask. I said, look, Robert, it's sort of gut feeling. I didn't really know, because you look at his and Coulthard's statistics, they're remarkably similar, because Robert put on distance after that, I think. He wasn't much longer than Andrew at the time, and they hit the same number of fairways, same number of greens. And I really couldn't give Robert a great reason. It was between the two of them, and it was a toss-up. I mean, it may be that Andrew was sort of more friendly with more of the team or something. I don't know. It was gut feeling. I'm not saying that was it. I can't remember at the time.
I'll be honest with you. I was surprised that you didn't pick Langer.
Well, Langer played really badly in the 10 weeks running up, so I discounted him completely, really. Well, unless he, showed a lot of form, and he showed no form in the last few weeks at all. Because
I thought, again, hindsight's wonderful. He might have been the extra body that you needed, as it turned out. The one extra body that would have made the difference. You could have mixed it up a bit more than you did.
Well, possibly.
Easy to say.
But then I wouldn't have put Langer in foursomes, because I played with him in foursomes in '91, and when Langer then was not the player he turned into in the 2000s, and as a senior, I mean, tee to green, he's unbelievable. He wasn't from tee to green. He wasn't as good in the '90s, it might be a bit unfair, but that time I played with him in foursomes in '91. I mean, his bad shots were, there was no coming back. Right. But I mean, as a senior, you'd almost put him in your Ryder Cup team. You're playing foursomes.
You could have made a case for him at one point.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. I mean, what he's done is just beyond belief.
Ridiculous.
To have the commitment to work as hard as...
That's the thing, is to want to still do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, once you got there, I mean, did how it turned out? Sorry, am I keeping you on?
No.
How it turned out, was that always part of the plan, or did that just evolved as days went on?
It evolved
in terms of the guys
pairing.
Play. Yeah,
it evolved. We got off to a good start, and they were playing extremely well, and. I made about. We had 7 rookies on the team, so it's an awful lot of rookies, which is probably about the second highest number ever. Yeah. So I didn't want to take any risks, because the first afternoon the crowd started to get bad. So I sort of thought I just don't like this situation. I thought. We need to keep points on the board, and so admittedly I got trapped into it, maybe because of the crowd and the fact that maybe I felt it was the safer play to keep playing the players who were playing well. But people asked, would you do the same again? Well, of course not, because we lost. So you try anything else.
Yeah.
But was that the best plan? Actually, I think it was. So I mean, it's just I was. It was upsetting, and the players deserved to win. I was sorry for them. And I was sorry for the 3 guys who didn't play the singles. But, that's happened before. I know Gordon J. found out he wasn't playing till the singles on the plane going to America.
The one...
Which is a bit early.
The most egregious example of that is John Garner.
I know, twice.
Didn't play at all.
No, 2 Ryder Cups.
With 1 foursome.
Oh, did he? Okay.
2 Ryder Cups.
That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. You think, crikey, he must have been terrible. Yeah. But he made the team, so he must have been...
he would have been perfect for foursomes, you would have thought.
He was still around, I think, just when I turned pro. Yeah, he was straight down the middle job, wasn't
he? He was. Yeah, good short game, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to focus too much on Brookline, because that's been done to death, and I'm sure you're tired of talking about it, but in the bigger picture, I mean, Europe's record in the Ryder Cup is extraordinary.
Yeah, and that kept the European Tour going for decades.
Can you explain it?
No. Can't really. There's been theories bandied about. I think the fact that we were friendlier with each other than the Americans on the whole made a difference, because we stayed in the same hotels on the continent, and certainly through much of the 80s. and 90s, when you got to a hotel abroad, you would quite often not organise dinner. And generally, people didn't work out much on tour, and not that much at home. I started in '89 working out, and I was one of about 10% who did it. So, when you got to a tournament, your first night, you'd wander down to the bar at 7 o'clock. You'd have a couple of pints, people would turn up, and you're doing anything, they'd come and join you, and you'd meet up with different groups, and it was great. So you were friendly with a lot of people, and simply through the hotels and meals. And I don't think America was not like that. It was a bit different. But, I don't know how much effect that had, but that's certainly one theory that was bandied about or has been bandied about, and I think it holds some water.
Perversely, in a way, it would help when it came to the Ryder Cup in terms of not only who should play together, but who shouldn't play together.
Yeah.
You would know that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in the American team, I see the guys a little tighter these days. Guys like Spieth, Thomas, and a couple of the others I can't bring to mind. Yeah. They seem nice guys. You just sort of tell that, they're super competitive.
But it's got to a stage where they play with a lot of fear in that Ryder Cup because they get slaughtered in the media every time they lose.
That last one, I think having it delayed a year was just a godsend for our team. It meant we got Aberg in, and McIntyre, and I can't remember who else. I was there for a couple of days, but suddenly we had a good team. From you only need 2 players to come into a team, and suddenly you've got a good team.
Well, especially if they come up in the top half.
And you take them away and replace them with a couple of average players, you've got no chance. So we were very lucky with the COVID delay in that respect. Not much else was lucky about COVID.
No, it was pretty depressing. Yeah.
Anyway, it was brilliant in Rome, but we'll pay for that. The crowd wasn't good in Rome. Scottish Scheffler, I was around the first 2 and the first shots were hit off, and Scottish Scheffler was heckled on his first opening tee shot, and you think,
hate to hear.
A, it's horrible, and B, we're going to pay for that in Bethpage.
Well, I worry about that. I mean, I was at Brookline for your when you were captain. I walked with Monty that last day for his first 10, 11 holes, whatever. It was disgusting. Yeah. That's the only word I can use. It was disgusting what was going on.
Yeah, so I mentioned that was a big factor in pairings.
And I worry about Bethpage.
Yeah.
I've been there, as you have as well. And
well, no, but
it could be really
New
bad.
York.
It could be horrendous.
Yeah.
And back in the Medina, 2012, as far back as that, which Europe won, I was ghosting Paul Laurie's book for him at the time, and we did the last chapter literally the week after the Ryder Cup, because that was the last chapter in the book. And he didn't put this in the book because he was scared to say it publicly, and maybe I shouldn't say it publicly here, but it's far enough away now. But he said he was heckled on every single full shot he hit.
Christ.
Every single one.
I know in 2016 it was bad at Hazeltine. It's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it was bad there too,
Yeah.
But nothing like Brookline. That's been the worst in my experience.
Well, the players don't mention it now because they just get even more of
worse.
it.
Yeah.
But there's no way of stopping it. It's scary. Too many crowd to pick people out. It is a shame. Yeah.
I just don't get it. It's only a game of golf. So anyway, moving on from the Ryder Cup, I don't want to dwell on too much, but the senior tour, I'm interested in I don't talk to you too much about your time on the senior tour in America. You were the kind of ultimate European tour guy until, you got to 50 and discovered there was a lot of money to be made over there. Was it that simple?
It wasn't that simple, actually. I remember discussing it with Jane at length.
But she'd have to be part of that. I mean, that's a big thing to go over there for as long as
you did. It's commitment. Yeah. I remember discussing it with her, and she said, if you don't go, you might regret it. So we decided, yes, we'll give it a go, book the tickets, 2 lots of qualifying. Great final Q school. McNulty won, I was second. I think Sam got his card as well, but he didn't last long. He just wasn't happy over there. Too much spare time and too much online poker and
I'm glad you said that. Not
all sorts of things to fill his time. He was much happier, and he did great in Europe. So he came back and was quite happy. But yeah, we liked it over there. The courses suited my game because they weren't as long as the sort of main tour stuff, because you have to cater for the shorter hitters. But I found them just the right length for me to be very happy. I wasn't short. I was in the top 20-30%, but I liked the length of the courses. And I played really well, had a great 7 years, and ultimately won one senior major, and ultimately didn't lose my card in 2010, but I had a relatively low one, so I wasn't going to get in enough, so I thought, when I'm only 57 or something, I'll come back, play in Europe, and I enjoyed that for a few years. But my putting let me down the last couple of years. My last year I was tied last in putting with Tom Purtzer. I don't know if you've ever seen Tom Purtzer.
Beautiful swing.
Wonderful swing. Yeah, nice guy. But
I did a thing with him when I was at Digest in the States. We did a kind of survey amongst the players who they thought had the best swing, and he won it.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I'd like to see him hold it off a bit more, but when I first really saw him, he was 50-something. So, but yeah, nice chap. We made a lot of good friends over there. The guys were brilliant. We had a lot of laughs, and you see a lot of people, and a lot of the guys who we'd seen on the main tour, guys like Hale Irwin and Tom Kite, and I don't know, there's so many, but it was really enjoyable, and we got on well, and we had a blast, and the tour were brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I played one tournament, and I thought my knee was improving, but in fact I'd torn a meniscus, and I went to them after the last round. I sort of hobbled through in a lot of pain, and I said, look, I'm going to have to withdraw from the next 3, because I've got to go home and I'm going to have a knee up, because I went to see the guys in the tour physio, and he did all the tests, said you've got torn meniscus, it needs an operation. So we'll go back to the hotel room, and trying to think of the name of the guy who was in charge then. I've forgotten. That's sad.
In charge of the senior tour?
In charge of the Champions Tour. Not a George, or I can't remember. Big guy. Anyway, he rang me up and said, Mark, I hear you, sorry to hear about you, and I hear you need an op. He said, well, on our tour board, we've got the owner of the Miami Dolphins or something, and he can get you in to see his surgeon. And Rick George was his name. Rick George, good guy. I said, that's really nice, Rick, thanks, but I'm probably going to go home and get it done. Put the phone down and obviously talk it over with Jane, thinking, this is ridiculous, this chap's going to be the best.
Yeah.
We're over here. He can get me in a couple of days. So I rang him back and said, that's brilliant, thanks.
No-brainer, really.
A no-brainer. I'd love to. And we just stayed on. They did the up 7 days later. And a few days rehab, came home. And 3 weeks to the day after the up, I was playing in the Mexican tournament. Buggies. For that one, it was very hilly, but I was fine. I'd recovered, I'd rehabbed. And so, that was, to do that for a foreign player, I thought that was fantastic. Not just Rick, but the whole ethos of, sort of, so I'd gone over there.
We're in this together. So.
Yeah, I'd heard some of the foreign players weren't that popular, but the reason is because they don't. Some of the players didn't spend the time with the amateurs. So you've got pro-ams. They didn't stay and eat with them. They didn't go to pro-am parties. They didn't really make an effort. And when you get into your 50s, if you can't do that, you what's the bloody point?
Yeah. Was part of it, I mean, if I'd been you with the career that you'd had and gone over there and done well like you did, there'd be a bit of satisfaction in that, just to show them that, that Mark James was maybe better than they thought he was.
Well, you'd have
if
to
they
know.
Thought about you at all, of course.
You're making a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
I've no idea how good they thought I was.
Yeah,
I've no idea. And they had so many good players. I mean, I wouldn't say I didn't exactly go over and dominate, but I played. I played right on and off for 7 years and made a bit of cash. So it was brilliant.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to ask you about. I know you had a encounter with cancer earlier in your life. How do you look back on that now, and what's the state of play with that?
When I was actually the year after the Ryder Cup, after captaining the Ryder Cup side, that was a shock. I was lucky in a way; it was treatable, and I had 3 lots of chemo. I had to have a laparotomy to find out what it was, and another one, dig out dead tumours a few months later, and I got very weak from the chemo, and but the whole thing sort of lasted. Maybe 8 months or even less, and from first symptoms to being A-OK. So I was tired. I struggled to play 4 rounds without getting tired for another 2 years, amazingly. And I would say the summer before I hit seniors was when I started to get over the tiredness. Mm-hmm. And I struggled with my swing as well. That didn't help. I'd had a fallout with my coach, and we'd parted company in 2000, just before I was ill. So when I came back, I was struggling, and in fact, I didn't really get a handle on my swing until late 23, when Ewan Murray wandered over on the range, and he watched for a minute or two, and I was hitting it terrible. I just said, any ideas? Gratefully received, and he, it's funny. He just told me like 1 or 2 things max, and it was like having everything thrown out my head.
At your level, that's something. That's all it takes.
It's like putting a hose pipe in one ear, and it washed everything away. And I just started working, and a few weeks later, I'm getting my card in the States, and I'd see Ewan once a year for about 2 years after that, 3 years. But we just didn't bump into each other enough, and he's always working. And in fact, I went back to my original coach, Gavin, early or late 06. So it all worked out pretty well. But Ewan, that was really a turning point. Him wandering over on the range. Without that, who knows what I'd have, whether I'd have played well or.
And like me, maybe the only good thing about the cancer was there was no danger of you losing your hair. Clearly,
Well, I mean, yes, that's no. It's amazing. Everything you think, nothing's going to happen, but actually, you lose your eyebrows, moustache, and eyelashes.
Yeah. Did it change your perspective on life without getting too deep about it?
No, it didn't. No. I thought it would, but it didn't. No, I came back. Just the same, bad-tempered, curmudgeonly. But it's funny when your hair falls out. My moustache fell out, and eventually I had to shave the few wispy bits left. And my niece, who was about probably 3 at the time, around at Jane's sister and husband's house, and she was under the table scrabbling about. And I said, "Grace, what are you doing?" Someone said, and she said, "I'm looking for Uncle Mark's moustache."
Very good. Excellent. Yeah. I'm going to finish with not my favourite subject, but something that inevitably has to be talked about a little bit at the moment, is the state of play generally. What do you see? What do you hope for? What do you think?
Live golf.
Yeah.
I think there's not been enough people without an agenda round the table with the Saudis and the tours. I think there's been, you need people who say, well, this is a good idea, that's not a good idea, but it all seems to have been one side against the other. And I mean, I don't know who's been in the room, but probably a load of lawyers who maybe don't know what's best for golf. Maybe they do, but yeah, there's a lot of intransigence. The tour should have settled about 6 months ago, 5 months ago. They had all the cards then. Since then, they've signed up Ram and Hatton, and I don't know who else. I don't keep a track on it, really. I don't even know if it's televised these days.
You can watch it on YouTube.
So it's not televised.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's horrible, and the players don't want it. But there's no question if they'd come to me when I was 48 and said, here's 10 million for 3 years, I'd have said, where do I sign? Yeah. I said, hello, Greg. I've always been a big fan of yours.
Yes. My problem is that the sadness of it is that everything is diminished right now.
Yeah, the trouble is, as well, you could have an extra tour, but you can't give them you can't give them world ranking points when every tournament is all invites. I don't know what they're talking about. You can't, and no one can drop off or aspire to that tour. So you can't give them world ranking points. I don't know what they're bleating on about. It's ridiculous.
My biggest problem is the competitive aspect of it. Is that you come to the last hole, you've got a 30-foot putt. You're playing it as an individual. If you want to hold, you're trying to hold it to win as an individual, but you have to lag it up to 2-putt to win for your team. You can't have that. You can't have compromises.
I don't quite get this team thing because with all sports you sort of have a team from a city or from somewhere, and there's an element of connection. Yeah. There's no connection. I don't watch it though, so and I haven't been to a tournament, so I don't know. But it seems odd.
Well, I've had this conversation with Lee Westwood, and I said to him, the biggest problem they've got is that if I'm typical, and I probably am, I'm not interested.
Yeah,
I don't care who wins, and I've no idea who. I couldn't tell you who won last time.
Neiman.
There you go. Well, but and I'm supposed to be working in this business, and I'm not following it like I should.
I just happened to see it. Yeah. It popped up on the BBC Sport.
And I went to the first one at Hemel Hempstead.
Yeah.
And I've never been back to it. I've never been assigned to go to another one, but it was certainly different. Yeah, and I think different. I like different, but I'm not sure they've come up with the right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Also, the shotgun start the last day. That's someone's finishing on 16 or 3 or whatever, and might come through the field. You think, oh, well, what's going on here? I don't quite see that as being I can see the first 2 rounds. I don't think that's a problem. Shotgun start's a bit different, but the last round, you want a progression towards a climax. You don't want it all sort of wham-bammy and what's going on. And
So what's your hope for what's the outcome?
Well, I mean, I think what should have happened was that there should have been a Saudi swing, a separate tour, or maybe world ranking and everything, whatever the Saudis wanted, but come in after the FedEx series ended in August. And that would have probably been really awful for the European tour. But maybe the Saudis, you could have given them sort of almost half of October, November, a 6-week jamboree building up to a world thing. And I don't know, I don't know what they want out of it, but, they have the money to put on something in Saudi Arabia or the Middle East that is so much nicer and better. Treat the players absolutely like kings. Put them in wherever they want to be, suites, and they could treat them so that they know if they're going to Saudi, send a plane that's leaving New York with only first class seats on it. They've got the money to do all that sort of stuff. So I think there would have been a way to do that, because all the Saudis want, I think, really is credibility, publicity. They're building this line city and Neom and all that stuff. They're building up, I assume, to running out of oil, or oil being not as popular in 2050. So trying to get all their ducks in a row for them and build golf courses and make tourism a huge factor, I assume.
The moral argument is not part of this. This is purely business for you.
Totally. I don't. With your moral argument of what?
Well, I'd like to see them stop chopping off heads and things.
Yeah, but you could argue, we played in Indonesia, China. You could argue that Britain sending immigrants to Rwanda is human rights.
If you start down that road, you never stop.
You go down there, you just tailor-make it to your own agenda.
I said that to the head guy at the Asian tour, Cho Min Thant, his name is. And I said, the moral side of it, he just laughed. He says, we've been to Myanmar. He says, we'll go anywhere. It's just,
I think
there's nowhere worse than Myanmar, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I went to, probably, possibly. I played in South Africa in the 80s. I was blacklisted from Sweden for a number of years. Really? And I think these countries, I really believe in the principle that these countries are better with Western involvement rather than being isolated and doing their own thing.
Yeah, you can influence them more from the inside.
I think so. I think so. There's an integration factor. And I understand the argument for not going. I mean, that's blindingly obvious. But I disagree with, and I see the other side of the coin. But I obviously you understand.
I thought that was Monaghan's mistake, is he made it a moral thing instead of making it just purely a business thing. Because if it's purely business, you can change your mind. Yeah.
If it's moral,
but you can't change your morals. You're stuck with them.
Moral, I think I think it's not a valid argument. The moral side. Otherwise, there'd be loads of countries you wouldn't play in, and that's not the case.
Go to America. They kill people in America.
They do, yeah. And I mean, yeah, capital punishment, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's another argument. I'm not going to reveal
no, it's
my
fine.
side of the story
and
on air.
We're now into areas that I wasn't intending to get into, but I'm aware.
Are you confessing that the interview is rambling a bit?
Well, possibly, yes. I have been known to do that myself.
It could be a joint effort.
Yeah, well, exactly. Anyway, Mark, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks again.
You're welcome.
Well, as I mentioned at the opening, I was genuinely and very pleasantly surprised by that chat, and a big thanks to both Huggy and Mark James for taking the time to do it. Well, you would have heard the name Howard Clark several times during that interview, and if you don't know much about him, then make sure to tune in for our next, when Huggy sits down with the Englishman for some reminiscing about a time in golf, or professional golf, very different to today.
I remember my first check in Portugal after 6 months of practicing and playing was something like £30 for finishing in the top 30. Yeah. So it wasn't a rich man's game at that time.
That's next time on The Thing About Golf.